Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Scotland and we're going to have a look at a beer from another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So these guys are a relatively new addition to the Scottish beer scene. They seem to be a very small operation in fact, and they seem to focus mainly on German styles of beer. And as you might happen to know if you've watched the channel for any length of time, my whole love of craft beer began with the Bamberg Rauch beers and my German flatmate Daniel. So I do love trying different German styles here on the channel. Now the one that we're going to have a look at today is a style that we don't get to review all that often, but it's one that I would like to explore a little bit more again over the next little while, because it's one that really has been quite neglected, to be honest with you. So we will try and sort that. But looking forward to trying this one. Hopefully it's another nice beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to go to a little village called Abernyte, which is about halfway between Perth to the west and Dundee to the east. Perth and Kinross, I guess we could say. And we're going to have a look at my first beer from Abernyte Brewery. So this particular beer is called the Banquo's Ghost. It comes in at 5% ABV, and this one is a Weiss beer, Hefeweizen, wheat beer, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, this should be very nice. My first look at a beer from Abernyte. But I bought this one in Ellie's cellar along in Dollar, which is just a few miles away from my house here in Clackmannanshire. And I asked the guy in there which one he recommended, and this was the one that he picked out for me. They had a few different beers in there. I think they had an IPA and a lager beer as well, but this was the one that he said I should try. And like I said, I hadn't had a Hefeweizen in quite some time, so I just thought, well, why not? So looking forward to trying this one. Let's crack on with the review and see how we go. Always nice to introduce new Scottish breweries to you here on the channel as well. So yeah, the Banquo's Ghost from the Abernyte Brewery in Abernyte, Perth and Kinross, Scotland. Let's go for it. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my future reviews that hopefully I can do from Abernyte Brewery. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to very regular at the moment because I'm spending a little bit of time at home in the motherland of Scotland. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about the Abernyte Brewery. And this will be quite brief because, like I said, these guys are pretty new on the craft beer scene here in Scotland. But Abernyte Brewery, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in the little village of Abernyte in Perth and Kinross, which is almost right in the middle of Perth to the west and Dundee to the east. You can actually turn off the A90, a road which I've driven many times going up to Aberdeen. You can just turn off it there and it looks as if it's only a mile or two away from that kind of main road there. But the brewery was founded back in 2015 by Donnie Meldrum and Ian Campbell. So Donnie comes from a background in engineering, whereas Ian has more of a business background, but these days they are both sort of house dads, as they call it. But they both wanted to move on from their careers to something that was new and flexible, and they'd always wanted to kind of start brewing beer, and so they just went for it and did it. But Ian's wife is actually German, so he had spent a lot of time over there, and so for that reason they focus mainly on different German styles of beer. But the brewery itself is based on a farm, and they brew their beers in one of the outbuildings there, but they have a 500 litre Braumeister kit from Germany, and they produce in the region of 35,000 litres of beer per year. But as of November 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, there are 20 different beers listed on Untappd, but Donnie in the email he sent me told me there are 17 varieties. So yeah, still, as I say, a very small operation, but it would be cool to see these guys kind of scale up over the next little while and get their German style beers a little bit more out there in Scotland. I think there's only West, I think, at the moment that are producing mainly German styles of beer, so it would be quite cool if these guys could make a proper go of it and things. But yeah, they seem to be doing very well so far, and I do look forward to trying more beers from them in the future. But that is all I can really tell you about Abernyte Brewery for the moment. A big thank you to Donnie, of course, for replying to my email that I sent to get some information, because it was almost impossible to find anything on these guys because they were so small. But yeah, if you have any questions and things like that, I guess you can just contact the brewery. But if you want to learn more about them, in the meantime, you can check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. And you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, that's it for your brewery history section. Let's get on and actually have a little look at the beer itself. So as you can see, this one is a half-litre bottle, which is actually quite rare these days from some of the smaller craft breweries in Scotland. You don't find too many of the smaller breweries doing this. Quite often it's 330 milliliter bottles or cans actually. So yeah, to get a half-litre bottle from one of the smaller breweries these days is pretty good. Of course, you know, the likes of Williams Brothers and Orkney Brewery and things like that, they're still doing the half-litre bottles, but they're a lot bigger than Abernyte. But there you can see, there is the Abernyte Brewery symbol. There you can see just kind of a little bit like a barn, because obviously they're based in the outbuildings on a farm. There you can see Banquo's ghost, of course, named after the Shakespeare character from Macbeth. I had to look that up because we never did Macbeth at school actually, but I was never a great fan of Shakespeare or English in general at school, but that's a different story. But yeah, it tells you a little bit about the beer on the side here. So it says, refreshingly delicate, our wheat beer or Weizen has finally appeared. In an age of hop-dominated IPAs, this should be a welcome guest at the table. Step mash, the mash temperature is raised through a series of rests, which allows us to modify the way the finished beer feels on the palate. We only use time to clarify and condition our beer. It is unfiltered and vegan friendly. Store in a cool, dark place and drink fresh. So yeah, that's what we've done. But yeah, plain silver bottle cap on this one. As I said to you, I bought this beer at Ellie's Cellar in Dollar, which isn't too far away, maybe about 30 miles or something from the brewery itself. So yeah, not too bad, maybe a little bit more, but yeah, can't think at the moment. So yeah, definitely cool to find a beer from these guys. And I just looked at it, saw it was a Scottish brewery, one that I hadn't heard of, so I thought let's pick it up. But I think I paid about £3.50 for this bottle, so that's maybe around, what, €4.25, something like that, somewhere in the region of 42 to 45 Swedish kroner, and then I guess maybe about $5 American, something like that. So yeah, that's a kind of price range for you guys watching in different parts of the world. But yeah, the Abernyte Brewery, Banquo's Ghost, Hefeweizen, Weissbier, whatever you want to call it, coming in at 5% ABV. Let's get this guy out then and see how we get on. Really looking forward to this. It's been a long time since I had a Hefeweizen, and I really couldn't tell you what the last one I had was, in fact. So let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting then. So I'm just going to check and see. I can't really see whether this one, there is a wee bit of sediment in this one, so we'll need to maybe sugar it up a wee bit and get more of it in. Let's just try this. So maybe we'll get a wee bit more carbonation out of this one now, but hopefully we will get a little bit more of the colour in this. There you can see a little bit, yeah, you can see a little bit of it coming through now. Yeah, Hefeweizen, of course, should be a hazy beer, and you're starting to see that haze coming through now. It shouldn't be crystal clear like that, but yeah, we'll see this as we go through it, of course. Let me just line that up for the camera once again. So it's got a little bit of haze to it now, but this isn't as hazy as I think the beer is going to be, but that doesn't matter too much for the moment. But yeah, anyway, so we've poured maybe about 2/3 of the beer into the glass. We've managed to get a little bit of the kind of sediment out of this one. It had sedimented quite a bit. Maybe my fridge is just a little bit too cold. But yeah, before the head disappears on this one, you can see there's somewhere in the region of a 2/3 finger frothy cream head. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass there. A few little ones going up towards the bottom of that head. But I mean, overall, it looks pretty nice actually. So you can see it's pretty much what you would expect of a Hefeweizen. And this one, of course, would be a Naturtrüb, unfiltered Hefeweizen. You get quite a few different ones. You get the Kristall, which is the filtered one, obviously, and you also get the Dunkelweizen. You can get Weizenbox and various other things, Weizen Doppelbox and stuff. But yeah, in terms of the colour, I would describe this one as being quite a rich, deep yellow colour. Remember, the colour of your beer depends on, one, the type of malts that you use. That usually determines the majority of the EBC rating, but the length of your wort boil can also play a role in that as well, because the longer you boil the sugars, the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will of course affect that as well, but when it comes to a Hefeweizen, unless it's a fruited Weizen or something like this, you're not really going to have to care about those two variables. But yeah, the level of haze in this one does look pretty good actually. There will be a little bit more as we add the rest of it in, so it should potentially be a little bit more hazy than this one. Than it actually appears just now, as I say. My brain is not working in this video, guys. I do apologise. But yeah, if I put my fingers behind the glass, you can see the colour of this one. Nice, rich, deep yellow. A little bit of a natural haze to it. And that's kind of what you'd expect. But yeah, not too much in the way of visible carbonation in this one. But then again, the Hefeweizen is not the most carbonated of styles, I guess we could say. It's usually quite a smooth but thick drinking beer, this one. So yeah, nothing really untoward with this beer in terms of its appearance. Let's take a closer look at the aroma and see how we go. Very curious about this. Yeah, it does smell pretty authentic actually. Now, as I've told you in various German style reviews, when it comes to these German style beers brewed in other countries, what I look for in these is how authentic they are in comparison to what you would find over in Germany. I know you're going to compare this one to the likes of the Weinstefaner Weiss beers. You're going to compare it to, Huberweiss, Meiselweiss, Schneiderweiss as well. These kind of beers. But I'll tell you straight away on the aroma, it does smell pretty damn authentic actually. It said that these guys, quite often they use Scottish malt, which is kind of interesting with this one because the malt base in this one really does smell pretty damn authentic, but probably they'll be using a German yeast, I would expect, because the yeast, when it comes to Hefeweizens, the yeast plays a massive role. It does in most beers, right enough, but in the Hefeweizen particularly, you can see it. But yeah, straight away with this one, you have kind of everything that you would expect of this style. So it comes across as a really nice and smooth but very clean Hefeweizen. I've explained this when it comes to Scottish beers before. Quite often Scottish beers just smell very clean because of the quality of the water that we have over here. You get the same thing with the Swedish and Norwegian, Finnish, Danish, Icelandic beers that I often review. You can get the same thing with them when you try different lager beers and stuff like this. They just are a little bit cleaner, if you like, than the German ones. The mouthfeel is a little bit different. And you can certainly smell that in this beer. It's got everything you'd expect, but it just smells a little bit more kind of crisp and clean, I think. That's fair to say. So the backbone of this beer, for sure, you get that lovely big white bready backbone in there. That comes to you right away, but you get a lot of kind of sweet banana in this one. You can smell it's like a kind of banana bread, if you like, but definitely some kind of clovey sort of spice for sure, absolutely. I also get a wee bit of a kind of, there is a wee bit of a kind of candied bubblegummy note out of this one, and I think the more that you smell of this beer, the sweeter it becomes. But yeah, I think banana bread is fair for the base. There's definitely a little bit of a kind of more grainy bread crust in there as well, but you also have yeah, you certainly also get that kind of clovey spice, as I say, the banana sweetness, and also just a wee bit of a kind of bubblegummy character. There's maybe a little tiny hint of like a slight biscuity sweetness, or I do get a little bit of a kind of biscuity Werther's Original type note out of this one. So there's a teeny little hint of brown sugar in this beer. So I like how that I do like how that goes together. Yeah, aroma wise, that on the malt base is very nice. So we say malt base, but the yeast is contributing to that as well, of course. But yeah, malty base gives you everything you would want. Big, kind of doughy white bready character. The banana's in there, the clovey spice is in there, and you've also got that kind of bubblegummy sort of thing as well. But the thing I think that's a little bit unusual about this one is I find it a little bit, there is a little hint of a Werther's Original kind of brown sugary McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. There is a wee hint of that in this, but you can certainly smell the bigger yeasty notes at the back of the nose in this beer, and then it's a little bit smoother in the middle of the nose as well. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things, it's pretty much as you would expect. I'm pretty sure this will be German Hallertau or Tettnanger hops that are in this one, and you can kind of tell from the brightness but also the smoothness of the hoppy character in this beer. Remember though, a Hefeweizen in terms of IBU will not be the most bitter of beers. I think usually they brew these to be about 15 IBUs, and so the green component will not be the most pungent in this one, but it just adds a nice little bit of depth to the beer. But yeah, on that green component then, there is a little bit of a smooth earthiness there. Nice little bit of a kind of brighter floral aromaticity, but again it's quite smooth. It's like quite a wet floral aromaticity you get out of this one. A little bit of a kind of wet, fresh cut grass character out of the beer as well, but on top of that you get some nice fruity elements. But other than that, I don't think there's too much to say about the green component in this one, but I'm pretty sure it will be some kind of Hallertau or Tettnanger hop that's in this one. Probably one of the kind of lower alpha acid ones. The big Hallertau and Tettnangers, the Mittelfrüh ones that you get, they tend to be about 4.5% alpha acid. And Hallertau, of course, is the Bavarian hop growing region. Tettnang is the Baden-Württembergish, can we say, hop growing region. So yeah, kind of quite often the same, but not too different. You get lots of different varieties of hops in these places as well. But yeah, the aroma on the hoppy side of things comes across pretty nicely in this beer. So on the fruity side of things, excluding the banana, of course, because the banana aroma I think is more associated with the yeast. On the hoppy side of the fruits with the beer, I think you've got a nice little bit of a kind of soft apricot out of this one, a little bit of a more kind of oily peary character as well. Maybe a wee hint of maybe just a little tiny hint of a kind of lemony, grassy sort of thing too. But yeah, mainly a smooth apricot, a little bit of a kind of oily peary character, and yeah, just a wee bit of that lighter grassiness. So I like how this one goes together actually. So it gets a thumbs up from me in terms of its aroma, and in terms of authenticity, it gives you everything that you would want from this style actually. So as I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. This one I think will give you what you want from this style. So let's leave it at that for the aroma and have a taste of this one then. So this one is the Banquo's Ghost, coming in at 5% ABV, a Weissbier, Hefeweizen, wheat beer, whatever you want to call it, from Abernyte Brewery in Abernyte, Perth and Kinrossshire, right in the middle of Perth and Dundee here in Scotland. Nice to introduce these guys to you here on the channel. Slàinte, skål, and cheers. Ooh. It is pretty nice. I'm going to say that straight away. And what I was saying earlier about this beer, or Scottish, beers being very kind of clean and crisp in general, this one holds up, but a lot of the flavour comes out in the aftertaste. This is one of these beers where it's very clean in the beginning, but a lot of your flavour comes out in the aftertaste in this one. So let's just see if we can get a little bit more of the kind of sediment and things into this beer, and we'll get exactly what it tastes like. There we go. I think that's all of it now. And I don't think... Yeah, we actually got most of the sediment out there. So we've got the kind of real beer now, I guess we could say. So you can see that the appearance of this one has changed quite a wee bit. It looks a lot more hazy than it did. So let's have a second taste of it and just make sure that what we said is right. Well, it definitely tastes a little bit thicker than it did. But still, you have that big kind of cleanliness to this beer. Now the German ones, and it might just be because I've tried a lot of these on tap in the brauhouses over there, but the German ones are, it's just the mouthfeel that's different. You get a big, smoothness and almost kind of, I don't know if creaminess is the right word for it, but when you try these on tap in the brauhouses in Germany, they will come across as just a little bit smoother than this. This one is definitely, well, a bit kind of thicker and creamier in a sense, but this one is very clean, quite crisp and quite slick in a lot of ways, but the flavour is absolutely spot on, and that for me could also be due to the conditioning as well, but that is for me quite often the difference between a German brewed Hefeweizen and a Scottish or a Swedish brewed one or whatever. You often just find that the flavour is pretty often well done, but the mouthfeel is slightly different. But let's break this beer down as we always do and just examine it properly. Now, I would say that this beer is one of these ones where the flavour that you pick up is actually very similar to what you would predict from the aroma. So straight away across the middle of your palate, you get a nice kind of smooth bread crusty kind of note. You can feel that going right across the middle third of your palate and the back third of your palate. On top of that, you get the big kind of thick white bready notes from the wheat, and it just goes together really quite well in my opinion. So yeah, that gets a thumbs up from me on this one. This is a well done Hefeweizen, and it's got what you would expect. So let's focus on that middle third of the palate now and just go through the beer logically as we always do. So middle third of your palate, as you say, we've got a little bit of a bread crusty base, the big smooth wheaty notes on top of that, and then you've got a few other things in there as well. So on top of that kind of white bready, wheaty kind of thing, you can definitely feel some of those banana bready elements. There's a lovely big kind of banana-y quality to this beer. There's not as much bubblegummy sweetness as I was picking up in the aroma with this one. I would say that this beer comes across as a little bit sweeter in the aroma than it does in the flavour, but there is certainly a little bit of that. Within that banana bready, that sort of banana-y sweet layer that you have, you definitely get a wee bit of the more bubblegummy type notes coming out of the beer. So, in terms of the kind of the sweeter side of the beer, because remember in the aroma I said I thought there was a little bit of Werther's Original butter candy type thing out of this. Perhaps in the very dead centre of your palate, right in the middle, you can pick out just a little bit of that Werther's Original brown sugary butter candy type thing in this one. You do get a little bit of that. I think it's diacetyl that would give you that normally, but it is kind of minimal, but you do get it the further you go into the aftertaste. Towards the front of that middle third of your palate as well, there's potentially just a little touch of a kind of woody aftertaste to this beer, but I think it works pretty, it goes together pretty well. It's quite a straightforward and straight shooting Hefeweizen. This isn't the most complex of styles that you're going to come across, but if you can brew it well, it can be very nice. I used to drink these beers really quite regularly actually. I always enjoyed a Weihenstephan right enough, but since when I actually lived in Germany, I really got more into the kind of Helles and things like this, and the lager beers, the Helles and the Dunkel. So these became more tasting beers to me, but this one actually is pretty drinkable in fact. But again, I would probably only drink one of these in an evening. I don't really session beer anymore, of course, because I'm more about tasting different things. But yeah, this is a really nice one to taste, and it has that authentic malt base in the middle third of your palate. So well done to them for that. So like I say, bread crust, the smooth kind of white bready layer. On top of that, the kind of banana sweetness. More into the middle of the tongue, you get that little bit of bubble gum, kind of candy sort of sweetness as well, and in the very dead centre of your palate there's just a wee bit of that Werther's Original sort of thing. The biscuity notes that I was picking up don't really come out of this one for me, to be honest with you, but I think that covers the middle third of your palate. Just one or two little woody undertones as well. Let's look at the back third of the palate then and see how we go. So, back third of the palate then, I would say this beer, it's quite, it's kind of the same, to be honest with you. On that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of a bready build-up in there, a wee bit more of a bread crusty sort of thing. Then underneath you get a little bit more, you do get a little bit more of a kind of intense and grainy bread crust in there. You can feel that the wheaty layer is a bit thicker towards the back of the palate there as well, and you also get a bit of kind of wheaty bitiness out of this one, which I can really appreciate as well. So you can get that out of this, but sitting on top of all of that, you do get the kind of more doughy, yeasty element out of the beer, and it is actually, you do get a little bit of the banana flavour in there as well, but you can feel it's a little bit dry and more kind of clovey and spicy. I think this beer is a little bit more kind of clovey and spicy on that back third of your palate too. So yeah, the yeasty layer that sits on top of that back third of your palate, it is a little bit more doughy. You've got the clovey kind of spice in there, and it just comes across really really nicely. So I like how that goes together. So yeah, I think I think there's definitely the yeasty notes and the kind of bitier and more grainy side of the beer is in that back third of your palate. But what you can feel with this one is that on the back third of your palate, the flavour is definitely a little bit taller. As you come further forward, it just condenses down a little bit as you go into the middle third of your palate, and those flavours are just a little bit more kind of squashed together actually. So I do like how that goes together in this beer, so that gets a thumbs up from me. In the back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of you do get a nice little bit of a smooth earthiness in there, but as you move further forward, you've got a little bit of a herbal character, and as you push towards the kind of front corners of the palate, it's a little bit more kind of floral and aromatic as well. So yeah, the green component in this beer is actually quite smooth again, and round the front curve of the palate you can feel a little bit more of a kind of zesty grassiness coming out of the beer, but again it's like quite a wet, fresh cut grass kind of thing that you're getting out of this one. I wouldn't be surprised if this beer uses one of the slightly higher alpha acid German hops, like a little bit of Hercules or Pearl or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised, because the green component for me is a little bit brighter than some of the other ones that I've come across. So a slightly higher alpha acid hop in this, I wouldn't be surprised. But Mandarin Bavaria might also be a thing. There's just something in my head about the flavour of this beer that is saying potentially a little bit of Mandarin Bavaria. But yeah, green component, smooth earthiness, a little bit herbal, bright floral aromaticity, then round the front curve of the palate, a little bit of a lighter kind of grassy kind of thing coming out of this beer. So I do like how that goes together. Let's look at the front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of the beer. So border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you've got a nice little bit of a kind of bready build up there. The base of that front third of your palate, of course, is a more kind of smooth, just white bready kind of thing, and on top of that you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. And this one is kind of what you'd expect. So at the back of that front third of your palate, you can feel a little bit of the banana just kind of creeping in. But then you do get a little bit of a kind of soft apricot out of this one. Maybe there's a wee bit of like a dry, kind of sultana type note out of this one, a little bit of a kind of white, green, grapey character. But as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, it's definitely a more kind of oily, peary kind of thing, which comes out of this beer. So yeah, I really like how that goes together for sure. So yeah, the fruity side of this one is actually quite smooth and quite slick and just a little bit oily, and again, it works really well. But you can feel that kind of oily, peary sort of thing just mixing in very well with the kind of grassy element out of this beer. So that, for me, does go together really nicely. The fruity side of this beer, I think, is very, very well done. Overall, like I've said, this beer has all the flavour that you expect of a Hefeweizen. It's one of the kind of smoother ones that I've come across, but the mouthfeel, as we've said, is with this one compared to one of the German brewed ones, is just a little bit, kind of cleaner and slicker in a lot of ways. And that, I think, is just the Scottish water. There's not much you can kind of do about that. I'm sure I said the same thing about the Hefeweizen. That would be the last Hefeweizen that I reviewed from West Brewery. So yeah, this one definitely stands up with that, the Hefeweizen. So if you like Hefeweizen, then see if you can get a hold of this one and see what you think too. But yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the flavour. Let's round off this review with a look at the mouthfeel. So overall, I would say that this beer is toward the lighter end of mid-bodied. The carbonation is very smooth. The beer has a nice little bit of slickness about it, which I really quite enjoy. So smooth carbonation, a little bit slicker, and yeah, like I say, it's not quite as smooth or creamy or whatever as you would expect of a German brewed Hefeweizen, but it works. It really does work. The flavour profile in this beer works. So malty side of things has everything again that you'd expect. It's lovely and smooth. There's a wee bit of dryness to it the further you go into the aftertaste, and it has that slightly spicy character you would expect of the style. Wee touch of sweetness as well. In terms of IBUs, I think this is a fairly standard 15-20 IBU beer. You wouldn't expect any more than that from a Hefeweizen. These are quite smooth and not very bitter beers. And the fruity side of the beer, you've got a bit of it from the yeastiness, of course, but yeah, you've got a lovely kind of smooth and slightly oily, slick, fruity character out of this one. But overall, a really solid take on the Hefeweizen. And I have to say, going from the mouthfeel of this one, I would love to have a look at some other lager beers. The Helles. I think there was a Helles lager that was listed in there, and there was a Pilsner as well. So I'll need to have a little look at some of those and see how they go, because I think the mouthfeel of this one for the Hefeweizen is, it's a very good example of a Scottish brewed Weizen, if you like, but this mouthfeel they have, I think, would suit a Pilsner, or maybe more a Helles actually. It's got a little bit of a kind of Helles type mouthfeel, this one for me, so I would like to have a go at a nice Munich or Dortmund Helles from these guys. So yeah, very nice beer, I have to say, from Abernyte Brewery. I'm a big fan of the German styles, as you know, and this one certainly makes me want to try a few more other things. So I think we can leave it there. So yeah, this one is the Banquo's Ghost, a 5% Hefeweizen, Weiss beer, wheat beer, whatever you want to call it, from Abernyte Brewery in Perth and Kinross here in Scotland. Really cool to introduce these guys to you here on the channel, and it's nice to have another German style brewery as well. So yeah, thank you again for watching my reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Abernyte Brewery as well, and we will return to these guys at some point fairly soon, I'm sure. Hopefully I can get a hold of a few more of their beers, and we will review those on the channel for you. Thank you again for watching. Check out my social media, check out theirs, and I'll catch you guys in the next review. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.